Derinkuyu, in 1963, beneath a perfectly ordinary house in a quiet Turkish town, a man picked up a heavy sledgehammer. He was simply performing routine renovations on his modest basement. He expected to find solid earth, perhaps some buried stones resting in the foundation. He swung the hammer heavily, and the plaster wall suddenly crumbled away, but there was no dirt waiting behind the rubble. There was only a freezing draft of air. What he uncovered in that pitch-black void completely shatters our understanding of history. What he uncovered in that pitch-black void completely shatters our understanding of history. What other secrets are waiting in the dark? At Echo Mysteries, we are dedicated to venturing into the unknown and bringing forgotten history back into the light. But we cannot make this journey alone. If you feel that same thrill of uncovering the truth behind hidden archaeology and ancient enigmas, please consider liking this video, sharing it with fellow truth seekers, and subscribing to our channel. Your support and your comments are the heartbeat of this community, giving us the vital energy to keep digging deeper into the past. Join us, and let's uncover the world's greatest secrets together. The Anatolian Plateau is merciless under the midday sun. Up on the surface of the Cappadocia region, the landscape is a violent masterpiece of geological history, defined by towering volcanic spires and relentless dry winds sweeping across the scrubland. Life up there in 1963 was loud, bright, and utterly normal. Inside a modest, sun-baked stone house in the town of Derinkuyu, a homeowner was wrestling with the mundane frustrations of domestic life. He simply wanted to expand his basement. He needed more room for his family. The air in the enclosed cellar was stifling, thick with the smell of sweat and pulverized mortar. He raised his heavy iron sledgehammer, aiming for what he believed was a solid wall. The steel struck the stone, but the feedback vibrating up the wooden handle was entirely wrong. The wall did not resist with a thud. It fractured with a sharp, hollow crack. A large section of the plaster and rock simply vanished, collapsing inward into absolute nothingness. The homeowner lowered his hammer, coughing as a thick cloud of white dust billowed backward into his cellar. As the particulate matter slowly settled, he stared at the jagged breach. What lay beyond was a secret hidden for centuries. He expected to see packed dirt. He expected to see the roots of the local landscape or a solid bedrock face. Instead, he was staring into a perfectly framed rectangular void. And then, he felt it. It was not a draft. It was an exhalation. A sudden, violent rush of freezing air poured out from the blackness, pushing past him into the warm basement. It carried a scent that did not belong to the 20th century. It smelled of undisturbed centuries, of deep subterranean dampness, and cold, petrified silence. It was the breath of the underworld. He reached for a flashlight, his hands trembling slightly, and aimed the fragile yellow beam into the opening. The light stretched out, piercing the floating dust. But it failed to hit a back wall. It simply faded into an endless, sloping corridor that swallowed the illumination entirely. The tunnel was begging to be followed. He stepped through the broken masonry, leaving the comforting heat of Turkish afternoon behind. The transition was immediate and brutal. The temperature plummeted the moment his boots touched the floor of the tunnel. The sounds of the surface world, the distant barking of dogs, the wind against the windows, were instantly erased, replaced by the deafening sound of his own breathing echoing off unseen surfaces. He moved cautiously downward, the beam shaking against the darkness. The corridor sloped at a deliberate, calculating angle, dragging him deeper into the crust of the earth. He walked for what felt like hours, though it was only minutes, entirely disconnected from the concept of time. He assumed, naturally, that he had stumbled into a geological anomaly. Cappadocia is famous for its bizarre natural rock formations, and a hidden subterranean river could have easily carved out a deep cavern over millions of years. He expected the walls to be jagged, chaotic, and formed by the random violence of water and tectonic pressure. But here is where the story deepens. He stopped walking. He raised the flashlight closer to the wall beside him. Squinting through the gloom, the surface of the stone was not random. It was scarred with thousands of deliberate strikes. These were chisel marks. He panned the light upward. The ceiling was perfectly arched to support the crushing weight. He shined the beam forward and saw the corridor split into two distinct, geometrically perfect pathways. Beside the entrance to the left pathway, resting in a meticulously carved groove, sat a massive, circular stone disc. It was half a meter thick and weighed hundreds of kilograms, positioned perfectly to be rolled across the corridor. The silence of the tunnel suddenly felt different. It no longer felt empty, but occupied by ghosts of desperation. The realization crashed over him in the freezing dark. This was not a cave, but a massive fortress. Someone had clawed their way into the earth, carving out an impossible architecture, and they did it to hide. Imagine pushing past that immovable circular stone door and stepping into the belly of the Earth's deep labyrinth. The ambient temperature stabilizes into a permanent, chilling cold. The air grows noticeably heavier in your lungs. The darkness here feels absolute, pressing against your skin. Archaeologists first began systematic explorations of this ancient site. They expected to find a few cramped, irregular chambers designed for a handful of frightened local families hiding. They expected the crude architecture of desperate survival, but the physical evidence defies that assumption almost immediately. As you venture deeper, you step into massive vaulted rooms carved directly out of the dense volcanic rock. You are standing in what were once fully functioning subterranean stables. Animal tethers are cut into the stone walls. Feeding troughs sit perfectly preserved in the gloom. The animals were not just hidden, they were bred here. You walk further, winding through unnervingly narrow connecting tunnels that physically force you to bow your head. Then, the claustrophobic space suddenly violently opens up again. You find yourself staring at commercial-scale wine presses. There are massive stone fermentation vats hidden entirely from the sun, designed for mass production in the dark. You pass enormous communal kitchens, their ceilings still permanently blackened by the soot of ancient fires. You even cross the threshold of an expansive religious school. It features a distinct, majestic barrel-vaulted ceiling, and meticulously carved adjacent study rooms for students. This was not a temporary panic room or a root cellar. This was an entire bustling Anatolian town. It was the exact equivalent of a thriving, noisy Turkish commercial center. But completely swallowed by the crust of the earth. People did not just drop down here for a single night. They brought their entire complex economy, their livestock, their educational systems, and their faith into the crushing dark. They lived complete, complex lives without seeing the sky. They ate, prayed, and labored by animal fat lamps. The sheer volume of this excavated space completely shatters conventional historical logic. When the definitive mapping was finalized and documented by organizations like National Geographic in 2015, the resulting measurements defied academic belief. The network does not stop at 3, 4, or even 10 floors. It plunges a staggering 85 meters down. It comprises 18 distinct, interconnected subterranean levels, stacked upon each other like an inverted skyscraper of solid stone. The carrying capacity of this buried metropolis is not measured in dozens, or even hundreds. This complex was specifically engineered to sustain a maximum population of up to 20.00 human beings simultaneously. That is an incomprehensible logistical nightmare for the ancient world. 20,000 breathing bodies, thousands of panicked farm animals, mountains of perishable food reserves, warehouses of grain and endless rows of clay water jugs, all existing within a sealed, artificial ecosystem dozens of meters below the soil. How do you manage the psychological terror? How do you prevent absolute mass hysteria in the dark? Early historical assumptions labeled these as simple storage cellars. Those theories are now completely dead. The overwhelming physical reality of the site violently rejects them. A few rural families hiding from passing bandits do not dig 18 stories straight down into volcanic rock. They do not carve out commercial infrastructure, public meeting spaces, and specialized religious schools. You do not painstakingly move 20,000 people, along with their panicking herds and their entire seasonal harvests, into a lightless void just to survive a temporary military raid. You only build a shadow city of this magnitude if whatever is hunting you on the surface leaves absolutely nothing alive. Imagine the sheer, visceral terror of being hunted. Across the open Anatolian plains, the sky above is thick with the black smoke of burning villages. You are running, driven by a primal panic, toward a hidden fissure in the earth. You scramble down the entrance, the air instantly turning cold against your sweating skin. You reach a designated subterranean choke point where the corridor narrows. This is where the brilliant, paranoid engineering of this shadow city is activated, waiting in a recessed alcove. Carved perfectly into the soft, forgiving volcanic tuff, is a monolithic circular stone. It weighs 500 kilograms. It takes the combined, frantic strength of 4 grown men to push it. You hear the deafening, grinding roar. Rock sliding against rock as the massive disc rolls out of its socket and seamlessly blocks the tunnel. You drive a thick wooden beam through the central hole, locking the stone permanently into place. It cannot be moved, breached, or shattered from the outside. Battering rams and cavalry charges do not work underground. You are sealed in. You press your spine against the freezing stone wall and listen, muffled by meters of earth. You can hear the faint, rhythmic thuds of heavy boots marching directly over your head. Surface world being eradicated. You have successfully barricaded yourself in an impenetrable tomb, but as the adrenaline fades, a new, insidious horror begins. You are trapped in a sealed stone box with up to 20,000 terrified human beings and panicking livestock. Dozens of open, burning torches. The psychological pressure of that confinement is incomprehensible, but the biological reality is worse. How did they breathe? How did they not go mad? 20,000 sets of lungs exhaling carbon dioxide. In a sealed, subterranean maze would consume all available oxygen in a matter of days. The air turns toxic. The torches would suffocate and die. The entire population would slowly asphyxiate in the absolute dark. The fact that they did not is where the ancient architects of Derinkuyu elevate from mere diggers to master engineers. Modern structural analysis, highlighted by platforms like Big Think in 2023, reveals a staggeringly complex, mathematically precise respiratory system for the city. The builders carved over 50 massive, primary ventilation shafts that plunged vertically through the earth. These were not just holes. They were the central mechanical lungs of the network. From these main arteries, they drilled thousands of microscopic, capillary-like ducts that snaked through the rock, delivering a continuous cycle of breathable air down to the very bottom of the 18th level. The airflow was calculated, deliberate, and flawlessly executed, exploiting the natural pressure differences of the deep earth. They conquered the problem of oxygen. They conquered the crushing weight of the stone. But here is where the engineering of Derinkuyu becomes truly terrifying. Because the lack of air was not the ultimate threat, they needed water to survive the long, agonizing months of waiting out an invasion. The city was built around a massive, naturally occurring underground river, accessed by a primary well plunging 55 meters deep into the bedrock. It provided a continuous, life-saving supply of fresh hydration. Yet, this magnificent well had one highly specific, deeply disturbing architectural feature. The central water shaft did not connect to the surface. It deliberately stopped short of the top layer of earth, completely sealing the water supply away from the sky. This was not a mistake of excavation. It was a chilling tactical calculation. If the merciless invaders hunting them above ground realized that a massive, breathing city was hiding beneath the soil, Their first military strategy would not be to waste months trying to dig through solid volcanic rock. It would be to find the water sources. They would simply dump diseased animal carcasses, human corpses, or lethal toxins down the well, by intentionally blind capping the 55-meter shaft and ensuring no single water access point connected all the way to the vulnerable surface. The architects prevented their entire population from being quietly poisoned in the dark. This was not just a marvel of ancient construction. It was paranoid, apocalyptic, militarized survival science. The physical reality of this subterranean fortress is indisputable. The rock is real, the empty space is real. The terrifying ingenuity of the defense systems is real. But when archaeologists began to peel back the layers of how this was accomplished, they collided with a massive, glaring void in the historical record. To carve out a city capable of holding 20.00 people, spanning 18 levels deep into the crust of the earth, you have to remove a staggering amount of material. We are talking about millions of cubic feet of solid volcanic stone that had to be chiseled out by hand, carried up through narrow, suffocating tunnels, and disposed of. If a project of that apocalyptic magnitude occurred today, it would require fleets of heavy machinery and leave a permanent, undeniable scar on the landscape. Yet, when researchers meticulously surveyed the surrounding Anatolian plateau, looking for the massive spoil heaps, the mountains of excavated rubble that should logically exist, they found absolutely nothing. The landscape is pristine. Whoever built Derinkuyu didn't just dig a city, they systematically erased the evidence of their labor. They dispersed millions of tons of stone so flawlessly that the surface remained entirely undisturbed, keeping their location a perfect secret from whatever they were hiding from. This level of operational security points to a society functioning under extreme, highly organized terror. So, who were they? This is where the archaeological community splinters into fierce debate. According to analysis published by Heritage Daily and supported by the Turkish Ministry of Culture, dating the site is a nightmare. You cannot carbon date stone. You can only date the organic artifacts left behind by the people who inhabited it last. The official, generally accepted timeline suggests that the earliest, shallowest levels might have been initiated by the Phrygians, an ancient Indo-European people who dominated Anatolia around the 8th to 7th centuries BCE. Others point further back, suggesting the formidable Hittite Empire, a civilization renowned for its mastery of stonework, might have struck the first blows into the tough. Both were brilliant cultures capable of monumental architecture. But even if they started it, they did not finish it. The overwhelming consensus is that the city reached its maximum, terrifying depth and complexity much later, expanded by desperate Christian communities during the Byzantine era. They took existing, modest shelters and aggressively pushed them deeper, turning a hiding spot into a full-scale subterranean metropolis. But none of that is the deepest mystery. The timeline is fragmented, and the exact identities of the first architects remain shadows. The real problem is the sheer logistical impossibility of the undertaking for a terrified, hunted population. Imagine trying to organize a massive excavation project in pitch blackness, using only primitive hand tools, while constantly looking over your shoulder for an invading army. How did they coordinate the removal of that much stone without alerting the enemy? Who moved the earth? Did they dig mostly at night, under the cover of darkness, dispersing the rubble far across the wind-swept plains? The silence of the historical record on this specific undertaking is deafening. There are no grand inscriptions boasting of the construction, no ancient texts detailing the heroic labor of the builders. The people who clawed this city out of the bedrock deliberately chose to remain ghosts. They prioritized survival over legacy. They understood that leaving a record of their achievement meant leaving a map for their executioners. The sheer lack of documentation is, in itself, a chilling testament to the constant, suffocating fear that defined their existence. Human beings are fundamentally creatures of sunlight and open air. We do not willingly entomb ourselves alive in the freezing, absolute dark. We do not abandon our ancestral homes, our fertile fields, and the open sky over minor political disputes or routine seasonal border raids. Standard ancient warfare followed a predictable, almost bureaucratic script. An occupying army would breach the city walls, execute the leaders, take valuable hostages, and demand a crippling annual tribute. The common citizens simply paid the new king and went back to their harvest. Derinkuyu violently rejects that historical narrative. This colossal, claustrophobic network was not built to weather standard warfare. It was constructed in response to an entirely different, far more sinister kind of threat. It was built to survive cataclysmic obliteration. The architects of this abyss were not hiding from ambitious generals looking to collect taxes or expand borders. They were hiding from forces of total annihilation. They faced the kind of enemy that does not negotiate, does not take prisoners, and does not stop until every living organism on the surface is systematically butchered. They were running from an apocalyptic slaughter. The sheer, impossible scale of the excavation proves the scale of their terror. The geographical placement of this subterranean nightmare is not a coincidence. The sweeping Anatolian peninsula, the landmass of modern-day Turkey, was the ultimate killing floor of the ancient and medieval world. It was the brutal, endlessly contested bridge connecting the aggressive empires of Europe and the massive conquerors of Asia. Invading armies did not merely march across this exposed plateau. They scoured it, they burned it completely to the bedrock. Historical analyses, verified by specialized platforms like History Hit in 2021, confirm the darkest purpose of these deep tunnels. They reached their peak defensive utilization during the merciless Arab-Byzantine wars spanning from 780 to 1180 AD. The conflict was defined by extreme religious persecution and genocidal intent. Being discovered on the surface meant an instant, horrific execution. Centuries later, these exact same lightless corridors were desperately activated again to escape the catastrophic, sweeping invasions of the Mongol hordes. The threat was always absolute. The people retreating into the earth knew exactly what awaited them if they stayed above ground. The ash of burned cities is real. The documented historical massacres are real. The necessity of a buried sanctuary is terrifyingly real. Picture the horrific, paralyzing reality of those moments of active siege. The surface world is entirely engulfed in roaring flames. Thick black smoke chokes the Anatolian sky, blocking out the sun. A ruthless, highly trained foreign cavalry sweeps across the arid scrubland, driving steel through anyone caught running for the hills. They are systematically hunting for survivors to slaughter, but 85 meters directly beneath the galloping horses, an entire forgotten civilization is holding its breath. 20,000 men, women, and children sit huddled together in absolute, suffocating silence. The animal fat lamps have been entirely extinguished to conserve the precious, limited oxygen. The darkness is a physical, crushing entity against their eyes. The only sound in the cavern is the collective, terrified heartbeat of a buried city. Then, the violent vibrations begin. They physically feel the heavy, rhythmic pounding of thousands of armored warhorses transferring directly down through the dense volcanic tuff. Fine dust shakes loose from the carved ceilings, drifting slowly down onto their upturned faces. In the pitch black, mothers press their hands brutally tight over the mouths of their own infants to muffle any crying. Men grip the wooden handles of their primitive weapons, staring blindly into the void, knowing escape is completely impossible. The tension is genuinely apocalyptic. The margin for error is zero. If a single tethered horse whinnies in the subterranean stables, The surface riders will hear it. If a single wisp of cooking smoke escapes a hidden ventilation shaft, the enemy will locate the primary breach. They will not bother trying to break the massive stone doors. They will simply pile burning brush at the air intakes and casually asphyxiate 20,000 people in their sleep. The people of Derinkuyu lived with the constant, paralyzing knowledge that their brilliant fortress could instantly become a mass tomb. That terrifying reality remained perfectly sealed in the dark. For centuries, it stayed hidden until a simple sledgehammer shattered a basement wall in 1963. The man who struck that plaster thought he was just expanding his home. Instead, he ripped open a portal to a buried apocalyptic past. But Derinkuyu is merely one single excavated site. The vast volcanic crust of the Anatolian plateau is riddled with these phantom structures. Archaeologists suspect hundreds of similar, perhaps even deeper subterranean fortresses remain completely undiscovered today. They are still resting silently in the pitch black. As you walk across the modern Turkish landscape, you have to wonder, what else is waiting below?